Hey there, how you guys doing? Hope you are doing well. This week we're going to have a short message on getting tired or frustrated with seeking. Go. Hey, welcome to the Ion Podcast, where we answer all the questions about spirituality and inner peace that you ever wanted to ask. I'm your host, Sean Webb. Okay, so I've been getting a lot of messages recently regarding a lot of questions on how to trigger enlightenment, how to trigger inner transformation, how to trigger the awakening that occurs when certain chemicals are released within the body because of meditative practices, etc. And a few folks, more than a few folks, voice their frustration that they've been at this a while and they're seeming to hit a brick wall or be stunted in their growth in not being able to progress further. And I was reading an interesting quote that won't quell any of those complaints at all, but it's by the enlightened master Simone Weil. And she said, even if our efforts of attention seem for years to be producing no result, one day a light that is in exact proportion to them will flood the soul. And it's true. I can speak from experience that is exactly what happens, that you seek and you're empty and you're frustrated and you're trying so hard and you think it's for naught, and then one day, out of the blue, it happens for you, and the experience that comes from that does supplant all of the time and the effort and the frustration and the seeking in exact proportion. In fact, in my case, it just blew everything out of the water, and I would wait multiple lifetimes to have that same experience. And so it does happen. But during that point where you're seeking and you're not seemingly progressing, it can get frustrating. And it can get tiring, and it can be like, what am I doing this for? But here's the paradox there, is that before you wake up to the fact that your false self is an illusion, that your me, your ego, is driving the bus, and that's an entirely fake existence that you've made up in your mind that doesn't really matter. Well, to become a seeker, what are you doing? But from that false self, putting another attachment on your attachment map that says, I want to be enlightened. I want to be a spiritual seeker. I want to be a spiritual master. I want to be whatever your attachments are that you place onto this attachment map that you then have to devoid yourself of. You have to give up before awakening. Well, that creates a paradox. Because at the point you're hanging on to something so tightly on your attachment map that you can't let go of it, the requirement is you have to let go of everything. You have to let go of all self before passing through that door, even if it's the last minute. I mean, it's true that spirituality is full of paradoxes. I mean, they're all over the place. I mean, even in the Bible, I am the Alpha, I am the Omega. In spiritual practice, we know that we are everything, yet we are nothing. It's said that, we must die so that we're able to live. And I think Carl Rogers had a great quote about spiritual discovery and evolving. He said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. And so spirituality is full of paradoxes. And this paradox that we're talking about today is one of the greatest, because in order to be a seeker of enlightenment, you almost need to give up being a seeker of enlightenment. because you need to devoid yourself of that attachment. You need to devoid yourself of that expected return in your seeking to be able to get to the point where the self finally dissolves and is replaced with an amazing experience that is catalyzed by a certain number of chemicals that are released because you're in the right brain space, etc. And if you want to understand the science about enlightenment, go back and listen to episodes, I think, 0099, and right in that numbered section of the podcast. But at the point that you say, okay, I'm looking for enlightenment, and you say, okay, well, I know that I need to stop seeking enlightenment, that creates another paradox, because then it's like, okay, if you're going to stop seeking for the purpose of seeking enlightenment, you're not really stopping seeking. And you need to. And so that creates a whole other paradox in that, you know that you need to release the attachment of wanting to be enlightened, because you're not going to get there if you don't release that. And then if you do release it for the purpose of getting to seek enlightenment, you're not really releasing it. You're trying to trick yourself. Well, here's the cool thing that allows us to slip out of this paradox, at least from my experience. Before I was able to trigger the enlightenment experience within me, I didn't know not to let go of those attachments until the very last second. In fact, the main message before I had entered the whole experience loop was these words that I heard in my head that I don't know where they came from, but you can listen to them in episode 20 of the podcast. Let go was a message that was delivered multiple times before I finally let go. And I let go of what I thought was life on earth, period. I thought I was dying. I thought I was having a heart attack or whatever it was that was taking me. I thought I was slipping into heaven because the immense love, the unconditional love that accompanied the whole let go was so convincing that I was able to and willing to and enthusiastic to let go of my entire life and all the relationships I would have moving forward and all my stuff and every part of my existence. The hymn that I used to sing in Methodist Church, I Surrender All, comes to mind. I surrendered all, everything. I let go of everything. I let go of wanting or needing to be enlightened. I let go of seeking. I let go of everything. I let go of the idea of wanting to develop spiritually and still remain alive. I let go of the still remaining alive part. I was ready to die in those moments. But before that, what led me to that moment, I didn't understand anything about this body, mind, spirit stuff. I didn't understand anything about attachment of the mind. I didn't understand anything about our emotions. I didn't understand anything about all the stuff that I've been teaching in this podcast and that I'm now handing up into science, which is being validated, which is very, very cool. It means I came back with something of value that I didn't have in my brain previously. So, and that brings up a whole nother question about where that intelligence is stored and what are we tapping into exactly when we pass through this experience. But I didn't know not to let go before entering into those meditations and seeking something. I was looking to add something else to my attachment map. And it was only at the last second that I got the let go message. In fact, I told a friend of the podcast this week through email, I said, look, my path was one of, by God, I'm gonna find this enlightenment thing. I read this Introduction to Zen by D.T. Suzuki, and he's talking about enlightenment. He's talking about an epiphany of a moment through deep meditation of the ceasing of the conscious thought of the mind, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And I went into the thing determined to wrestle the 800-pound gorilla of my mind into silence. And that particular meditation, that particular day, opened that doorway and released the chemicals, which we now understand are the catalysis of the spiritual enlightenment experience that we presume the Buddha had we won't get into that discussion, but that willful, strong attachment, more important than anything else, was what was driving me. And so we're a little bit relieved of the pressure of the paradox of wanting to be enlightened and needing to get rid of the attachment to become enlightened because of the fact that I proved that we could go into enlightenment with a fervor, go into it with an intention that is so dramatic, so severe, so dedicated, and still actually stumble into the thing. Still actually stumble into the experience, stumble into the awakening through, by God, I'm going to get there. But that doesn't relieve us of the anxiety, of the stress of not getting there or not improving. I know why the frustration there is there, of course, because the point that you put on the attachment that you want to be enlightened, all of a sudden you have the expectation or preference that you want to be enlightened. And then every time you go and sit and meditate or something doesn't happen for you, that creates another perception that isn't equal with your expectation or preference over here. And of course, the imbalance in the equation of emotion, we know from the Body, Mind, Spirit 101, creates the negative emotions, the frustration, the impatience, the boredom, the whatever you're experiencing associated with the imbalance in the equation of emotion, because you want to be enlightened and you're not enlightened, you want to be progressing and you're not progressing. That's why that occurs. And so maybe being mindful of that whole process, being mindful that your attachment to developing, your attachment to becoming enlightened, your attachment to deepening your spirituality, simply know that that is haunting you and stunting you and stopping you from your progress. Because at the point that you can consciously look at that, the point that you can consciously look at your yearning, consciously look at your goal to become enlightened or awakened or a deeper understanding in your spirituality, and simply being with that, forgiving yourself for having it, and then going back into the practice with a renewed beginner's mind of, I'm just going to see where this takes me. You know, maybe it's in my destiny, maybe it's in my physiology to be able to become enlightened, maybe it's not. But there are a number of things that can be discerned. There are a number of doors within myself that I can open and learn things. And by the way, just from a scientific perspective, meditation and loving kindness meditation and taking time to clear your mind has positive physical benefits, as proven in multiple peer-reviewed, published scientific studies at this point. There was a 10-year study that proved meditators had 66% less heart attack and stroke than people who are eating right and exercising. So, there's always that you can cling to. If you need to cling to something to keep you meditating or to keep your practice going, cling to the physical and psychological benefits and the brain benefits, the brain plasticity changes that occur in a positive way to increase your memory. Anyone want Alzheimer's? Not me. I want my hippocampus strong. And that's one of the benefits of meditating, right? So, you can hold on to that and create the attachment that helps you stay into the practice without getting frustrated, without getting bored, without losing the wind from your sails. Because losing the wind from your sails, of course, is another paradox that if you lose the motivation to attempt to do the things to become enlightened and you stop doing them, you're never going to become enlightened. You're never going to have those awakenings. You're never going to have that growth. So my message to you is this: don't become frustrated. Don't allow yourself to become frustrated. At the times you become frustrated, just be with that frustration. Be with that mindfully. Know the process that comes together to create that frustration. Look at it in your mind. Because one day Like our enlightened teacher Simone Weil says, even if our efforts of attention seem for years to be producing no result, one day a light that is in exact proportion to them will flood the soul. If you're talking about becoming frustrated with your path, just be with that. Understand it's part of the process. It's a paradox that you're going to have to work through. And there is a way to work through it. Stay on the path. I love you guys. If you want to support the podcast, go to IamSpirituality.com, make a contribution. We are saving our money for some awesome stuff. So add your contribution to the peace chest that we are building in contradiction to having a war chest. And we're going to do some awesome stuff in the future. So I appreciate your support. If you want to support us in a different way, you can get a free audiobook at audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/IamSpirituality and check out one of their 150,000 titles as read by the author, so you can get to hear their voice and their inflection, their emotion in what they wrote, or professional voice talent if the author has a totally horrible voice, as I'm hearing that some people do. So check those guys out, and if you sign up with them, they give us money, which is awesome, and we save that as well. Hope things are well for you this week. Talk to you soon. Peace.